Good afternoon, everybody. And in the case of my Australian friend, very early in the morning. Thank you, Helen, for being on with us. Today, we're going to talk about a variety of things. So we're going to be kind of reviewing some of the basics in Photoshop. And I'm going to start with just a couple of slides. And then we'll get into doing the editing. So this is a little bit of what we're going to talk about. So first of all, we're going to talk about the different types of layers. So we have our background layer, which is your image when you bring it into Photoshop. We have adjustment layers, art layers, which are like textures, or if you're doing a composite, other images and things like that. Fill layers, which can be a solid color or a gradient, and text layers. And the ways we can utilize the layers is by masking with a layer mask, clipping a layer to another layer, and grouping layers. And we're going to go over all this stuff, so you don't have to remember it all. It's just kind of an overview. And then we can make adjustments to our layers by changing the opacity, the blending mode, and adding layer styles. And then we have selections. We have our quick selection tool, select subject, object selection tool, and magic wand tool. And we'll be touching on, I think, all of those. And so with that, let's get processing. So let me close this up. And we're going to start with, this is an image I've been using for a long time to kind of demonstrate what is a layer mask. So it may not be the greatest image, but it works great for this, this project. So what we want to do here is to illustrate, again, layers and masking and what they do. I'm going to make the background black and white, and then we're going to have the butterfly stay in color. So one of the first tips I have for you, over here on my layers panel, you can notice my thumbnails are pretty good size. They're not teeny tiny. If yours are really small and you want to make them bigger, you're going to come over to what they call a hamburger menu, these little lines here at the top of your panel. And when you click there and go to panel options, you'll see there are no thumbnails, which I don't know why you would want that, but there are 3 different sizes, and I have the largest one checked. So that's how you can get your thumbnails looking a little bit bigger. Okay, so the first thing I want to do, and I always found it to be a good habit over the years, is to duplicate your background layer. You may not actually need it sometimes, but it's just kind of like extra insurance in case you make a big fat mistake and accidentally save something. You still always have that layer underneath of it. So I'm going to use one of the layer adjustments to turn this black and white. So we're going to come up to our adjustments panel, and I'm going to choose the black and white one. And then these sliders let you change the brightness or darkness of the colors that were in the actual image, the original colors. And I'm going to type in my numbers because, of course, I already have them in the notes. Don't forget to get your notes. 53, 10, 5, and 49. So I was only looking at what these sliders are doing to the background, because the butterfly itself, I'm going to bring back the color version. So I don't really care how that looks in black and white. So we can close that. So now we have our black and white version. And any of these layer adjustments, when you add them to your layer stack, they all come with a layer mask already applied. So the thing the mantra to remember when you're masking is black hides, white reveals. So right now this mask is all white. So everything on that layer, in this case the black and white, is revealed. We're seeing that whole layer. We're going to take a paintbrush and paint with black where we want to see this layer below it. And that black will hide part of this black and white layer. So let me go ahead and do it so it will make more sense. So I'm going to grab usually I use a soft round brush, excuse me, when I'm masking, so I don't have hard edges, but because the edge of the butterfly is hard, I'm going to choose a hard round brush. Ooh, not that big. Super giant size there. Yes, so I I made my brush smaller, in case you don't know this, using the bracket keys on my keyboard. So they're the square brackets that are to the right of the letter P on your keyboard. The left one makes it smaller, and the right one makes it bigger. It's much easier than coming up and deciding on a size, because I don't really know what 60 pixels looks like, and it changes depending on the size of your image. So I've got my foreground color is black, and we're just going to start painting. And you can see nothing is showing on the layer yet until I lift my finger off the mouse. So when I do that, you can see where I've just, excuse me, let me grab some water. I got a tickle in my throat. You'll see where I just painted with black. So that black is hiding this black and white, and we're seeing the color layer underneath. You can almost think of it as like punching a hole in that layer so we see what's underneath of it. And the best part about masking, and you'll see I just did it here, is I went, oops, I colored outside the lines. So the easy way to fix that is on your keyboard, the shortcut to flip the black and white or foreground and background colors is the letter X. If you just hit the X, we now have white in the foreground, and we can paint back where we made a mistake. So we have the black just where we want it to be. Now, sometimes you have a very complicated subject. This one is pretty simple. And so I'm going to show you another way you can use a selection tool to select it and make your mask. And it could be a quicker way. So I'm going to just go ahead, and I've got the white on. I'm just going to erase all this back. So we're going to kind of start over. All right. So I'm going to select my image layer. I'm going to go over here to the quick selection tool on my toolbar. It's the brush with like the dotted circle there. And then on the top panel, I'm going to use the select subject and let Photoshop do the work for me. Now this is actually better than what I painted because it selected these thin little antenna in the leg here, which I wouldn't really be able to do very well with my brush. Luckily they're black, so it didn't really matter. But if you had something that were in color, it's a much easier way to make a selection. And then we're going to click back in our mask. And I'm on a PC, so for me, and I have to make my foreground color black, so I use my X key. On a PC, to fill the selection with black is Alt plus backspace. On a Mac, it would be Option Delete. So you can see it just filled that selection on my layer mask with black. And you can see even the little antenna and the little leg are there. And then to deselect this selection is a controller Command D for deselect. So I do use some keyboard shortcuts, and I'll talk about those as I go. So I do have printouts of keyboard shortcuts. If you're interested in those, let me know, shoot me an email, and I can send you those. So we've done this. So another option of working with layers is, say we wanted to bring back a little bit of the color in the background. We don't want it completely black and white. We want to see a little bit of color. We can take this black and white layer and lower the opacity. And I'm not going to come back a lot, maybe about 75%. And you can see we have a nice pastel going on in the background. So that's another way you can utilize an adjustment layer. And if you have questions, please do put them in the chat box. Make sure that you choose to everyone from the drop down so that everybody can see your questions, but feel free to do that. Hey, it says, how did you put the selection into the mask? That's a great question. Let me undo a couple steps here. Okay, so we have our selection made. You're going to click on the layer mask to make it active so it has the line around it. Make sure your foreground color is black. And then I'm on a PC, so it's Alt backspace. On a Mac, it would be Option Delete. And that will fill in that selection on our mask. Okay. And then if you wanted to, you can lower that down, or you could keep it black and white. Alrighty. So I'm going to close that one. And of course, before I do that, let's undo that. When you're saving your files, if you want to keep all these layers, which is kind of the point of working with layers, is so you can come back to it and make changes. is you want to do a file, save as, and it sometimes defaults to PSD. I prefer a TIFF file, or you can use the PSD, which is the Photoshop file. Years ago, when I was doing a lot of stuff with Topaz, I started using the TIFF because their programs couldn't read a Photoshop file. So TIFF is a more universal format, and I just kind of stick with that. But it's your choice there. So we're going to just close that. I'm not going to save it because I already have it saved. So next we're going to do sky replacement. Dave's being funny behind me. Tell us what we're going to do. That's a good question, Jean. Are TIFF files larger than PSDs? I don't think there would be a whole lot of difference because they're both containing all of the layers. Would have to save something as both and check that. I can't give you a definitive answer. All right, so what I want to do here is I want to change the sky. So before we had the sky replacement tool, which I'm going to show you in a second, we used to have to manually select the sky and delete it. So again, I'm going to duplicate my layer with a Control-J. That duplicates our layer, Command-J on a Mac. And I'll demonstrate the Magic Wand tool, which is great when you want to select things that are pretty consistent in color. So under our quick selection tool, if you right-click it, we have our Magic Wand tool. So I want to click kind of in the middle range of this color from the dark to the light. And I actually need to change this. So the tolerance, the lower the tolerance, the more selective it's going to be. So if I click it at 2, it's going to only choose things that are really close in color. So instead, I usually work with this up around maybe 35 to 40. Let's see what 40 will do. And we're going to click here. Yes, and it selected a whole lot more of our image. And the other thing is I have contiguous checked off right now, so that's why I didn't select anything under the arch. Let's undo that. If we uncheck that, it will select this color no matter where it is in the image. And then to get these other little areas, I'm going to hold my Shift key to add to the selection. And whoop, it selected too much. Let's undo that. Let's try and go here. We'll have to manually undo this. So this is why this older method is actually more time consuming. So now we would have to, I would probably switch to the quick selection. I'll hold my Alt key to minus for my selection, and then go around and get this building that shouldn't be selected. That's not a bad selection. And then I could add to it by grabbing those couple little points. So what I would do now, and I'm going to turn off my background layer so you can see it happen, is I would just hit the delete or backspace key, and it would delete our sky and bring in a new one. But you can see there's a lot more steps. It can be more complicated. These buildings were fairly easy to select, but when you have trees and leaves and other things like that, it can get much more difficult. So let's undo this. And I guess it was a couple of years ago, they introduced the sky replacement. Luminar actually had sky replacement before Photoshop did. So we're going to go to Edit and Sky Replacement. And it opens up this panel, and it will always load whatever the last sky is that you used, and this happens to be the one that I want. But to choose your sky, hit this little arrow next to the picture. You can see I have all of my sets in here. This is from my Puffy Clouds 2 set, and I have a bunch more. Select the one you want, and then just kind of click off that panel. And then we can make some changes. So let me flip my notes here. Oh, and to bring in like a new set of skies, like if you buy the notes, you get all my textures and things. So you would get this sky. To add it in, if it's a single image, you could use this little box with the plus sign. Just click that, and it will it's over on my other screen. It will open up your file folders, and you could go to the folder and then just add the sky from there. And if you have a whole folder, if you like bought a set or you have a set from somewhere else, you can click the file folder and it will always add them at the bottom of your menu. And this slider changes the size of your skies. I like them fairly large so that I can actually see what the heck it is. Because if they're too small, then you're trying to guess a lot. So under our sky adjustments here, so we have overall adjustments. These are for the sky, and this area is for like the foreground. So I want to bring down the brightness of my sky just a tad, just a couple points. And then I want to be able to kind of move these clouds around a little bit. So right now the scale is at 100, which matches the size of your image. I'm going to make that slightly larger. And it's going to make my clouds a little bigger, but now I can also move them. Now, I can't go too low because then you see that I'm coming down off the page, but it gives me the opportunity to go side to side or move them up as long as it stays below my horizon. Now, the other thing I want to do is you always want to check the direction of your lighting. So in this case, the light is coming from the left, and you can see where the shadows are here, and that's illuminated on this side of the St. Louis Arch. And on the clouds, the light's coming the other direction. So then we want to flip. There's a little button. Click that, and now it's flipped our clouds so that they match the proper lighting. And then I'm going to move that probably about there. And I like being able sometimes to, like this cloud sort of frames the building, doing things like that. You can kind of pay attention to things like that when you're working with the sky. So now I'm ready to save this back into my Photoshop. So down here, before I hit OK, there's an Output To button. I always use New Layers. You can also do it on a duplicate layer. And why I like the new layers, I will show you. I'm going to hit OK. It brings it in as a group. I mentioned grouping layers. Well, this automatically makes a group. And what that does is all of these layers make up our sky replacement. You can see the sky, and these are the adjustments Photoshop did to it. That little brightness adjustment I made, that's right there. But when we're working with a lot of layers, sometimes the panel gets very crowded. So when you have a group, you can hit that little arrow next to the file folder, and it will collapse that group. So you can see it still says Sky Replacement Group. And then if you want to see them again, just hit that arrow again to open it back up. So it's just a handy way to kind of keep your panel condensed a little bit. Mickey says, if you want to use your own sky images, what file type? Just as a JPEG. That's all you need to do. All of my textures, all of my skies, everything that I sell in the store, they're all JPEGs. And I usually save my images like 15 inches on the long side, and then makes them at 300 DPI, and then they're big enough to, upscale them a little bit if you need to when you bring in, especially a texture, it will work fine. Amy says she sometimes compresses with a TIFF, but I never compress. Yeah, I don't either. When I do a file save as, if I choose a TIFF, and let's hang on one second here. We'll save this one. When you hit save, you get this panel, and I always leave it at no compression when I do it. And these are like the defaults, so I just always use that and not had an issue. Okay, let's see what else we got. How do you undo a group? So once you have the group open, you would highlight all the layers. So click one, hold your shift key, click the last one, and do a Controller Command G. And that grouped them again. I gotta remember now. How do I undo it? Control Alt G? No. I thought usually Control G does both grouping and ungrouping. That's a good question. I'm going to have to look that up. I haven't done it in so long. I usually make a group. I don't usually ungroup them. Let's try Shift J. Nope. Let's see. Maybe I need to do that. Control. Nope. That made another group. That's a good question. I'm going to have to look that up. If you want to shoot me an email on that, I will definitely check on that for you. Oh, Sandy said try undo. I don't think so, but let's try it. Edit. Undo. Yeah, that'll only do the sky replacement. Because I didn't group these, it came grouped that way, so I don't know if that's different than... Yeah, you probably could drag them out. Let's see. If we drag them above that. Yeah, you could drag them out of the group if you needed to. And you just drag them above that till you see that little blue line. Jane says Shift Control J. Let's try that. Shift Control. Nope, that duplicated them. I don't know. Right click. That's a good. Oh, there you go. Right click on it, ungroup layers. There you go. I said I haven't done that in like years probably. Sometimes you forget these things, but there you go. So it is Shift Control G, but it didn't seem like it did that when I did it. But you can always right click the group, and thanks Jane, that works, and Amy, and Joanne, and Don, and everybody who commented. Thank you. Eric says, what version of Photoshop am I working in? I am on the Creative Cloud, so it's their latest update. I just updated it, I think a couple of weeks ago. So this is Creative Cloud. So this has the latest in all the different features and things like that. All right, so let's close this one. So that's our sky replacement. So next, I'm going to show you a couple of easy ways with some of the new AI tools, how to remove things. When I had done this image years ago, I tried getting rid of some of the cars, and like doing healing or cloning was nearly impossible. I did manage to get rid of, I think, this one on the right and this little part of one on the back. But I'd really like to have this car just be by itself. And you can see I've already done my editing and sharpened it up and all that fun stuff. So what we're going to do, again, you can duplicate your layer. I'm going to grab the lasso tool over here on the left. And I'm going to use generative AI, and I'm going to circle the area I want to remove. Now, you don't want to get right up to the image up where I am, like up a little bit in the tree line, because you want to give the program the ability to know what you want to put there. But when I get to the car, I do want to be close because I want it to not pick up the car as something to put in that area. And I'm not doing it. Ugh. Okay, so I can add to my selection by holding my Shift key because I messed up there. And so let's just do this and this. And I want to take away a little bit here. So I'm going to do the Alt key, or Option key, which will let me minus from my selection. And that's a little bit. And then I'm going to show you how you can tweak that later. So instead of doing both sides at the same time, I find I get better results if I do one area at a time. So we're going to come down here to our generative bar. They call this, I always forget what they call it, the contextual taskbar, and that's down here. If you're not seeing yours, go to Window and Contextual Taskbar. And once you open it, if you haven't done this before, it will float around the image depending on what you're doing to get it to stay in one place. If you hit these three little dots, you can pin the bar position. So you want to do that, and then you can move it into position like I have here, and it will stay there. So it's not in my way. So for that, I'm going to hit, and these commands will change depending on what tools you've done. So like I've just made a selection, so it's giving me the generative fill option. You could type in a prompt if you want. Usually when you're replacing something like this, I don't need to type in a prompt. And then we'll just click generate. This does use some of your generative credits. Most people get like 250 per month, and I'll show you how you can check how many you have. Okay, so it has done it. It gives you 3 options. So this was the first one. Here's the second. Oh, I don't like that. No, I don't like that at all. These are not as good as what I got before. I'll show you my finished one when we're done, but I got more like trees or bushes over here. So if you don't like any of these, choose the one that's probably closest to what you want, and you can always generate again and get 3 more options. And this goes usually pretty quickly. It doesn't take too long for this particular function. Yes, Dave typed in, this is a Chevy Style Master at a place called Chevy Supply Company of Assonet, Massachusetts. We did a couple workshops there. Dave and I had found it ourselves a while back. All right, so this looks a lot better. So we have our 3 new versions here. Yeah, I definitely like that one the best. So we're going to go with that one. So I'm just going to close this panel, and you can see it's put this in, and that's where I drew my selection. So it kind of uses that to mask it in. If we needed to remove any more of the car, which actually looks pretty good there, you could always circle again and, just do a small section. I don't like where I went there. So we're going to come over, down around the car. And I missed some of it there. So again, I'm going to hold my shift key and select a little bit more. And we'll do our generative fill and generate. Yes, Linda says, when you ask for more choices, does it cost you more credits? Every time you hit generate, I think with the generative AI, it's only 1 credit. I've never come even remotely close to using all of my credits because I don't do this all the time. It's, stuff you do for a specific function. So I usually don't use that many. That actually looks pretty good. That one's not bad either. I think I like that one because it's darker. So I'm going to close that. So now we have our car by itself. Let's see. So we've done that. So now I want to make an adjustment just to the background. So what I want to do is, there is a little bit there. So what I would do is I would probably circle that. It's so small there, I'd probably just use the clone tool, and in this case, and just kind of clean that up. Oh. Okay, so it's not letting me clone because these become smart objects. So you can either do it on your main layer, but what I prefer to do, if I add a blank layer and make sure sample all layers is checked, I can do this on a blank layer. So I'm glad that popped up because that's another good little tip there. All right, that looks pretty good. I'm not going to get too fussy because I got lots more to show you guys. But you can layer this, healing, cloning, whatever, so that you know what you did there. So now what I want to do is I want to put the car on a separate layer because I'm going to darken down this background a little. So because I have all these different layers, I'm going to create a merge layer, which Haya's just asked about. You can flatten these if you wish, if you know for sure that you like these. I always prefer to do, they call it either a merged or a stamped layer. And the keyboard shortcut on a PC, you want to select the top layer, and it's Control, Alt, Shift, and the letter E. On a Mac, it would be Command, Option, Shift, E. And now this is a combination of all these layers without flattening these. It's just kind of insurance to, in case you want to go back to something, you could just delete this layer and still have all those there. And I always rename that merge just so I know what I did there. Okay, so I'm going to go to my quick selection tool and do a select subject. And it's done a pretty good job. It looks like of the car. You might want to maybe add a little bit more down there. And you could obviously fine tune it. And I want to put this now on a separate layer. So when we open our image and we do a Control J, it copies the whole layer. If we do a Control J or Command J, when we have a selection, it only puts that selection on a separate layer. So now I'm going to come back to my background layer, and I'm going to add a brightness and contrast adjustment layer. So now this is below the car, so it's not going to affect my car. It's only going to affect the background. And I'm going to bring my brightness down to about there. So you can see that was the before and the after. So we've toned down that background. It automatically does that. So when I made my selection, when I did a Control J, it put just that selection on a transparent background. That's how it does that. It's an automatic thing. So that way you don't have to delete any background. So by doing that, we put that just on its own layer. So now this is affecting this layer. Now I want to brighten the car a little. So I'm going to, whenever you add a layer, it always adds above your selected layer. So I'm going to highlight my car layer. I'm going to do another brightness and contrast layer. But I only want this to affect the car. And because I have other layers here, if I brighten it now, it's going to brighten the whole image, right? So we want to clip this layer to the layer below it. And the way we do that is hold your Alt or Option key and put your cursor between the two layers. So when you see that little square with the downward pointing arrow, click once. And you'll see that that shifted over, and now there's a little arrow, and that's telling me that I've clipped this adjustment to that layer. So now, when I adjust something, it's only affecting that car layer. All right? So I just want to, go about there. I just wanted to add just a teeny bit of brightness there. So now, two other things I'm going to do. I'm going to, well, we're going to do it in one time, but I want to add a little more grunge to this, like it's not already grungy enough, right? And also add a little bit of a vignette. So I'm going to use one of my dark frame grunges, and you're going to hear me say, bring in this texture or bring in this layer. So the way you do that, I work with two monitors, so I'm just grabbing from my other monitor over here and dragging it in. If you're not working with two monitors, the way you would do this is to go to File, Place Embedded. And you're going to go to the folder, this is the folder I'm working on, this is the one I want. So I'm going to double click it, and it's going to add it the same way. It's going to make it a separate layer, and it's, again, always above the active layer. So I'm going to bring that to the left, hold my Shift key, and stretch it out to cover my image. So anytime we're working with any kind of a texture, which this is basically a texture, it's just some areas are transparent, and that's the way I made this. This is one of all the textures I'm using are mine, and this is from one of my grunge frame collection. It's actually called the Grunge Border Set. I have that in the notes so I'd remember. I want to change from normal blending mode. I'm going to choose multiply, but then I'm going to bring the opacity back to about there. So multiply is a darkening blend mode, and then I lowered the opacity to give me more of the look that I was going for. So our car is the feature, and then I've toned down that background even a little bit more. And it has just a little bit of texture in the middle, a little bit of grunge. Most of it is around the edges. So I like that better than just doing a regular vignette because it will blend in a little better with the background. Alrighty. So that is that guy. So next, we're going to work on this one. So I love the flower with the lace wing butterfly, but the background is way too busy and pretty ugly. So the first thing we're going to do, I'm going to do a Control J, and I want to darken and soften the background. So I'm going to again use my select subject, and it did a pretty good selection. So then I'm going to do my Control J, and he's now on a separate layer. So I want to add above the background layer a brightness and contrast adjustment. And in this case, I'm going to bring the brightness way down and add some contrast. And the background's going to change because we're going to also add some bokeh textures to it. So, but we want to get it dark to start with. So now I'm going to select this layer. Oh, sorry, this duplicate layer. And I want to add some more blur to it. So we're going to go up to Filter. And instead of using a Gaussian blur, another one I like to use is under the blur gallery, and it's called a field blur. It's similar to a Gaussian. I don't know, sometimes I just like the result better. And then what you do is move this, and you'll see how it can completely blur things. I'm going to go to about 50. And then on this top toolbar, we'll hit OK. So now that is applied to that layer, and we still have our flower and butterfly the original way up on top. So now we're going to add a texture to the background. So I want to do above this blur, or brightness and blur layer, because I want it to be above all that. And I'm going to bring in, this is one of my bokeh textures. These I use a lot. This is from my Bokeh 1 collection. So I'm going to rotate this because I don't want to distort the sizes, the roundness of the circles. So I'm going to hold down my Shift key. And as I move the arrow, when I put my cursor outside the corner, get that curved arrow, and I start to move it, by holding the Shift key, it moves in 15-degree increments so you can get it perfectly square without kind of guessing at it. And then Shift key and stretch it. Now in this case, because it doesn't really have any bokeh on the edges, I'm going to hold my Shift key, and I'm going to, actually I don't want to stretch it because we don't want to distort our circles. I'm going to, wait, and I did that already, so let's redo that. Sorry, I did stretch it out and I shouldn't have done that. So we're going to rotate this and put it here, and I'm not going to stretch it. I'm just going to stretch it but not keep the proportions. So I'm not holding my Shift key while I stretch, and I'm going to bring it out so the circles go off the edges. So you can always go bigger than your image when you're working with a texture. I kind of like the way that works. What's that, dear? Dave said bigger is better. That works. And then if I click on the Move tool, I can move this around and kind of get the circles where you want. So you can kind of dial it in. Okay, so we did that. And now I want to change the blending mode. And this one, I'm going to use Screen. And then I brought down the opacity to about 47. So what Screen does is keep the bright areas and the darker areas kind of faded away. Opposite of what Multiply does. Multiply keeps the dark areas and will drop out any bright whitish areas. Okay, so we're almost there. So what I wanted to do last is, I didn't like these couple green bright spots over here. So I'm going to select or go down to my background copy layer. And I'm going to do it right on the layer, but you could use a separate layer for it. I'm going to grab the burn tool, which is this little hand-shaped one. You've got dodge, burn, and sponge. So this is like the old darkroom, dodging and burning. And I'm going to darken down these areas, and the exposure is at 100%. I'm going to hide the texture for a moment, just so we can see it better. And usually you don't want to do a lot of burning in one spot because it can get kind of gray, but that's okay because this already is like a gray or black background. And it's not really, let's turn that off too. It's getting most of it. Let me make my brush a little smaller. And this is when you do have to go over it a bunch of times. I'm going to kind of, and then if you really aren't getting what you want, the other kind of cheat way you can do things is to grab the smudge tool, this like pointing finger, and just drag off the edge. Works great for edges like this, as long as it's a pretty solid color. And then I'm going to turn these back on, and there you go. Now we don't have those bright green ooky spots over there. So now, next thing I want to do is make some adjustments to my flower and butterfly. So we're going to select this. I'm going to, so now we're going to talk about a smart object and what that can do. So I could just add a filter to add the camera raw filter right to this layer. But if I wanted to come back and make changes, I'm going to make this a smart object. So what I'm going to do is right click on the layer and convert to smart object. And you get this little curved thing down here in the corner telling me it's a smart object. So now I'm going to go to my filter, camera raw filter. And I'm going to add under effects, I'm going to add some texture and some clarity. So I'm going to crisp this up a bit. And then under detail, I do sharpening and some noise reduction. So I'm going to go here and color noise reduction about there. And we'll say okay. So now what we have is that we have the filter right underneath of our image where it will let me double click this and go back in and make further changes if I needed to. Whereas if we just did the filter on this layer, you would have to undo it in order to make changes. Okay, so it's a way to get to go back into your images better. And then I'm going to crop this just a little bit. I don't like that little bend in the stem there, so I'm going to bring that up a little and maybe just smidges on the sides. And there you have it. And that is how we can use those tools. So let's close that one. I'm checking to see if we had any other questions. Yep, a couple of people are mentioning our ICM conference on August 22nd. It's a one-day conference. It's $59. We have 5 speakers, and we're doing 1.25 hour classes, so it's like 6.25 hours of instruction. And like our other conferences, you get speaker notes, a goodie bag with some freebies and discounts. We have door prizes, and you'll have 90 days to watch the replays. Oh, sorry, $45. Why was I thinking $59? Oh, because that's the regular price of the 2-day. Sorry, it's $45. So it's an even better deal. And It's about ICM, but not only in camera, but some really, really cool things that you can do in post-processing. If you go to my website, we'll talk about more at the end, but on the website, there's a link to the conference. If you click the conference tab, hover over it, and then you'll see the ICM conference, and then you'll get a drop down of each of the speakers have their own page with their bios and sample images and their info on their classes, so you can get all the details there. Thank you, Vicki. I'm glad you like that one. It says, what dimensions do you crop for sharing on social media? I don't worry so much about the dimensions. Before I save it, I would save this first, save my TIFF file, and then if I know I want to put this on social media, I'll flatten it and save it as a JPEG, and I'll make it like 6 inches on the longest side. Yeah, you can, do, and I usually put my watermark on it. Of course, people can still copy things, but if you're going to put it out there, there's always that chance. So I just don't worry about it. But I make it like 6 inches. You could do even like 5 inches. Yes, Sandy, I am going to do a session on ICM with your smartphone and some post-processing on your phone. So yes, it is also, and some of the other people use phones as well. So it's a mixture of camera and phone. Thanks, Janelle. Dave says you'll burn your brain out, but it will be fun. But you do have 3 months to watch the recordings, and you'll have the speaker notes, and some of them are like, the one person who already sent me his notes, it's the slides basically that he's going to talk through. So you'll have good information, and my notes are always detailed. Cindy says, how do I know what layer to be on when I add an adjustment? Top layer, background layer. Depends what you want to adjust. So in this case, I wanted this brightness layer. This was when we darkened the background. I wanted it to affect this background layer and not my flowers. So that's why I chose this layer to apply the brightness and contrast to. And then I also wanted the texture only on the background, so we applied that here as well below our flower layer. And then for the flower and butterfly, I wanted the camera raw only to adjust that layer, not the background. So that's why I made this a smart object, and that is now only applying to that layer. So that's how you kind of choose. It says, you only talk about iPhones. What about us who use Androids? Most of the things that we're doing will be both. Some of the apps that I like to do for post-processing are iPhone only, but most of the time you can find comparable ones for Androids as well. There's only one app that I use a lot, and that's Distressed Effects with textures, and that does not have anything I've been able to find comparable on an Android. But most of the basic stuff I use is for both. Okay. Wow. 4:48. Okay. Well, we only got a couple more. We can get through these. If we're a few minutes over, you can hang with me. All right. So what we want to do here is, I'm going to, I'll hold any other questions on the conference till the end so we get through these. All right. So what I want to do with this one is I want to put this in a shape and make a border. So it's a different way of making a border, okay? So I'm going to bring in my shape. Again, you would do file place embedded if you're on a single monitor. And I'm just going to drag this over. And instead of having the border be the color, this time I want the shape to be black, and because I want to create a new border. So I'm going to rotate this because my image is a vertical. So again, I'm going to put my cursor down here, hold my shift key, and I'm just going to rotate it up. And you can start by stretching it to the full size of your image. and then we can adjust from here. So what I want to do is, because I know I'm going to add some type at the bottom of this, I want to bring up this, whoops, got to hold the Shift key, all right? Bring up this bottom to about there. So I have some room to add to, and we can still move this around even later on, but I'm going to kind of get it where I want. And then I might make the border just a little bit wider so we can bring this in a little bit as well. Okay. So now what we want to do, and I didn't duplicate my background layer, so Control J, and I'm going to turn this one off so you can see what will happen here. I want to clip my image to the shape. So I'm going to drag this layer to the top. And the way we clipped a layer before, I'm going to hold my Alt option on a Mac in between the two layers and click. So we used it before to do an adjustment layer that we clip to something, but now we can also clip the photo to this shape. So now you can see it's taken on that black like mask shape. So like I said, they're called crop shapes or clipping masks. They're kind of interchangeable terms. Okay, so we have that, we've moved that, we've done the clipping. So now we need to create our background. So I want that to be below this shape, so I'm going to select the background layer because again it always adds above the current layer, and I'm going to add a blank layer, and then we're going to fill this with a color. And I chose the color from the image, so you would choose a color by clicking your foreground color picker, and you could click around in here, but I wanted it to sort of coordinate with this, so I started, I think, somewhere down in here, and then you could click around. I have the number I ended up with, so we're going to type that in for FE. So yeah, this really light blue, so we'll say okay. And then we want to fill this layer with color. So on a PC, it's Alt Backspace. On a Mac, it's Option Delete. The same control as when we filled the mask with the selection. It's that same function, but now we're doing it to the whole layer. So now to kind of jazz up this background a little, we're going to add a pattern layer on top of this. And the way we do that is you can go to Window, Patterns. And these come with Photoshop. I have my little icon docked over here, so I can always open it from there. You want to go to the legacy patterns, and if you don't see those in your Photoshop, click that little 3-line menu, and you're going to go to this legacy patterns and more, and you'll be able to open them from there. You may have to import them. It's been a while since I've done it, but I don't want to click it because I already have them in here. So we're going to go to the legacy patterns and more, and then I went down to open the next folder for legacy patterns, and there's tons of them in here. And then we're going to go down to patterns 2. And I chose this first one. It's actually, if you hover over it, the names will pop up. This is actually carpet, but I just liked the kind of soft swirls it had, and the tones also worked with this. So even if you picked something black and white, it's going to show up black and white, but I'm going to show you how we're going to, again, make that interact with the layer below it by changing our blending modes and opacities. You can also, let's close that box, double click in the thumbnail, and you see it automatically did the clipping. Remember how we had to clip that ourselves because we only wanted to affect this color layer? It automatically does that with a pattern. You don't have to do that alt click in there. If I double click to reopen that pattern, I'm going to make the scale larger. So right now this is the default size of that pattern. I'm going to make this 188. That's what I ended up with after there's a little slider here if you click the arrow, and you can decide from there. So I wanted it to be a little bit bigger. So we'll say okay. And then I changed my blending mode to linear burn, which kind of darkened the effect, and then lowered the opacity to about there. Okay. So that is our new background color. Now, to make our photo kind of stand out a little from the border, I'm going to add a drop shadow. So now we want to be on the shape layer because the shape is what we're adding the drop shadow to. And to get to our layer styles panel, we're going to double click in a blank area of this layer, and that will open up layer styles. And then I want drop shadow. You don't want to just check the box because then nothing changes over here. Just click the row so that you get the proper controls. I'm going to leave the blending mode at normal and black. And you can see how it's already popped it up, but we're changing it around a little bit. I always like the angle of 135. That's so the light's coming upper left to lower right. I'll bring back the opacity later so you can see it better. And the distance, spread, and size are what control the size and the look of the drop shadow. So you can see if I go distance, it brings it farther away from the shape. Spread will spread it out. And size makes it softer. So I ended up with 0. I just wanted something really subtle, so these numbers are much smaller than I usually use. And then we're going to bring back that opacity to about there. So you can see it's really slight, but it just gives that little bit of separation from the shape to the background. So now I want to add type. So we can add above our top layer. Let's see. Daniel says, what's the direction for the drop shadow? I used 135 degrees. It doesn't really, I'm not trying to match the shadow. I'm just, actually you could, I guess. I didn't think about that. So let's go back in. That's a good idea. So I can reopen by double clicking. So maybe we want to move it more like there. So with this case, because it's so small, it's not going to make a huge change. But yeah, that is something good to pay attention to as well. Thank you. So now we're going to add type at the bottom. Now I think I want this border up just a little. So I'm going to click on my shape, go to my move tool so I get the handles. And I'm going to hold my shift key and I'm going to move that up just a little more. So you can always keep moving this shape even when you're done. So now on my top layer, I'm going to go to my type tool. And we're going to choose our font. And I'm using, let's just go to all classes. I'm going to choose my favorite list. I'm going to use the Cinzel Decorative. And this one does have a bold version. So we're going to use the bold. This font you can find free on Adobe Fonts or Google Fonts, as well as several other sites. I have the Google link in the notes, but if you just Google Cinzel Decorative font, you'll be able to find that. So I'm going to set my foreground color to 8060A8. So it's, ew, that's not what I want. You know what? I think I messed that up when I typed the notes. I think that's supposed to be a 3. Yep. Sorry. So if you get the notes, that color number should be 3060A8, not 80, or it'll be purple. So I just wanted this dark blue. We'll say okay. I've got my point size, which I can change. I was going to start with 48. You can choose any size here, or you could type in a different size, and we'll change this once we get it in there. I'm uncentered, so my image is about 8 1/4, so I'm going to move my cursor down so it's pretty much centered. And I'm going to start typing. And this is, let me flip my page here, because this font was pretty cool, because some of the letters have like swashy letters. So in the notes, I show you exactly how to type this. So we're going to use a capital 0 and then DIE or lowercase. And even though they're uppercase, but they don't have the fancy swashes that some do. ISLAND I-G-H-T. And that works pretty well. So we can hit the check mark. And then I'm going to grab my move tool again. I want to move this down a little bit. When you're moving anything, whether it's type or object, if you want to just move it like a pixel at a time, because sometimes it's hard to get it exactly where you want, use the arrow keys on your keyboard. So I'm just using the down arrow, and that's moving it 1 pixel at a time. The size works for me. It's about the size of our shape there. So I'm going to just kind of click off so you can see that is our font. And I'm going to zoom in here because we're going to now add layer styles to our type. So I'm going to double click on my type layer. The font is Cinzel Decorative, C-I-N-Z-E-L. And we're going to do a couple things to this. So we're going to start by adding a stroke. Let's move that up here. And I want the size to be, I ended up at 4 pixels. And of course, all of this stuff changes, you know, depending on what you're doing, the size of the image you're doing. I want this to be white, so I'm going to do F, 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 F. I was going to use a dark blue, and then I accidentally clicked on the white, and I kind of like the way that looked. I want it to be outside the letters, so it's making the letters a little fatter. I left the opacity at 100%, so that looks good. Then we're going to do our drop shadow. I am going to make this my 135. You could do something different. Opacity the same. My angle. So now I want a wider number here so that we can actually see the drop shadow. 21, 20. And again, you would just move the sliders till you get a look that you like. And yes, I used 135 because I want it coming that upper left. That's the angle I happen to like when I'm doing things like this. I just think it looks nice. You can do however you like. The color number is, let me go back. It's 3, and in the notes it says 8060. It's 3060A8. So just, I know you have the notes, Sandy. Just change that first digit to a 3. So the other thing I like to do with type is what they call a bevel and emboss. And this just makes the letters look like a little 3D. Let me close this so I can zoom in even more so you can really see how this works. So bevel and emboss, and you can see it added what was already probably the last settings that I used. And what I want to do, this you want to be an inner bevel usually, because I want it on the letter. And what it's doing is making like a highlight and a shadow with the letters. I usually use Chisel Soft. The depth controls the amount of the shadow. So I'm going to go to, I want it to like 292 there. I want it going up, not a concave. And the soften I take all the way over because I don't want it to be a sharp. If you bring that down, you'll see it's a very sharp chisel, which sometimes you may want that kind of an effect. Generally, I like it higher, like anywhere from 13 to 16. And the size I brought down just a little bit. And we'll say okay. So now the letters before and after all of these effects. So that's just typing the type, and it just looks like it's plopped on there. To me, it's boring. So by the effects, we've added some oomph to it, and that is our finished project. Let me click down here so all the handles go away. And I think these are kind of cool to do if you wanted to make, postcards or cards of your images, or even to frame something from different places you've traveled. It's just kind of a nice extra thing to do. All right, we've got 2 more. It's 5:04. I'll try and go quick through these. So I'm going to hold all the rest of the questions till the end. What's that, dear? The link for the webinar, I'll have it posted by tomorrow morning. In the email you get from the Zoom system sometime tomorrow afternoon, it will have the link in it. I'll also have it in tomorrow's blog and newsletter. So you will get an email from Zoom, and I'll have it in there. But then I also post it on the blog and newsletter. Okay, so in this one, I want to select the sky. So I'm going to use the quick selection tool. And I'm going to select subject. Let's see what we get. Well, that didn't select a whole lot. So I'm going to finish selecting the rest of this down here. Sometimes it's easier to select a different object, and then what I want to do is invert the selection so that the sky is selected. So then I'm going to go to select inverse. So now you can see the marching ants are around my sky. We're again put this on a separate layer because I want to do a adjustment just to that. So we can make this a smart object. And then we're going to do our camera raw filter. And I just wanted to add a little bit of saturation, but I only wanted it on the sky, not on the bottom. So that's why I'm doing it this way. We'll say, okay. So again, it's a separate filter, so you could go in and make other changes. And now I want to add a light to the lighthouse, a light beam. So above our sky layer, I'm going to add a blank layer. I'm going to go to my brushes, and I'm going to go to, I have so many brushes, I finally got them in order and groups and things so I can actually find things. And I'm going to use this Light Beams from Obsidian Dawn. This one, I think it used to be free. Right now it's $5 to purchase the set. Again, the link is in the notes, but there are tons of different, and at the end of the notes, you'll get a copy of my font resources and brush resources. Lots of different sites that I like to use, so you can get some other places there. Let's see, I'm using Burst 5, this one. I want the color to kind of be a pale yellow. FFF8A4. That's not right. 8A4. So it's a light yellow. I want my brush much smaller. So I'm going to use my bracket keys, and I ended up at 400 pixels. And we've got our separate layer. You always want a separate layer so we can move it if we need to. Make sure the brush opacity is 100% because we can always lower it, but you can't increase it. And then I'm going to kind of center over my light and click once. And if you need to move that at all, we're just going to go to our move tool. And again, you can move it in like 1 pixel increments and then click off of it. And there you go. And then we can always, I did lower the opacity a little bit to about 85%. And there you have it. So that is just, again, selecting one area for an adjustment and then adding a brush to add our light beam. All right, one more project. It's a real quick one. And I'm going to show you how to change the color of a texture. So I wanted to add some more grunge to this, and I've already done work to this. I changed the sky. I added this antiques and things because there was nothing up there. And I took that sign in Arizona. This is in Tennessee. So I'm going to bring over my texture. Slide it over, stretch it out. And I want to use multiply to darken it, and bring back my opacity. Now, I like the texture, but I don't like the color. I don't like the warmth that the brownish tan color is making. I really just want the texture without color. So we can click on a black and white adjustment layer. And again, I don't want my whole image black and white, so I'm going to hold my Alt key and clip that to the texture layer. And now, hold on, dear. I'm going to adjust. The brown tones are made up of just reds and yellows, so I'm going to, you can see I'm brightening or darkening it. So I'm going to darken the red a little and brighten up the yellow part. And about there. And then if you sometimes you need to go back and readjust the opacity, more or less, whatever you like. But now I've added that texture without adding any color to my image, which is what I wanted. And there you have it. So hang on, and I will go through, I will go through questions. Let me put up this slide, which will answer a couple of them. So you can go to my website and then click on the Peacock Studio, and there are subcategories for the webinar notes, and you'll also see all my textures and courses and ebooks and things. Again, the ICM conference, I did say 59 here. It's not 59, it's 45. Sorry about that. It's what happens when you copy things from one thing to another. So it's only $45. I have to change that. And you get all the good things I talked about. And I set the dates for next February's Creative Photography Conference. You can mark your calendars for February 20th and 21st. Registration will open November 1st. And I have a couple workshops this fall. East Pennsylvania and West Pennsylvania. The East one has 3 spots left. I had 3 people in this one, so I've got 5 spots in the West Pennsylvania. And then sign up for my blog if you don't already get it. On Sundays, I give away 3 free textures. And then there's always info on all the webinars and seminars and different things coming up. All right, let's see. Yes, Beth says, when is the class on brushes? I'm working on it. Mary Ellen answered that. Right now, I'm in the midst of updating all my seminars for camera clubs for this fall, and I'm almost done. Out of like 15 seminars, I've got 4 more to go. And then write my class for the ICM conference, and then I will be working on that. I promise, Beth. I know you've been waiting on that. So let's see if I missed any back up here. So hey, to get the notes, Dave's posted the link a couple times in the chat. But again, if you go to the website, you can go to the Peacock Studio store and click on webinar notes. It's also in the link is also in the blog and the newsletters that I've done recently. The Starburst brush, the company is, hang on, let me look it up. I'll put it in. It's kind of gotten hard to find it for some reason. I think because things are paid now and not all free like they used to be. The site I got it from is Obsidian Dawn. And this is their light beams brushes. And it's $5 now. And again, in the notes, there's a whole page of different sites that I like. For most of them are free. One thing to remember, if you are using free items, generally they're not for commercial use. So if you're looking to sell your images, you may need to spend a few dollars and buy a license so that you are legit. The other thing, when you're downloading from free sites, and I have this on the page, make sure you're clicking on the product and not an ad. Some of these free sites have tons of pop-up ads going, download here, and it's not really the download. If you look closely, it'll be easier to find. It's pretty easy to find the download. Just be careful of what you're clicking on. how I changed the color of the light beam. I didn't change it afterwards, but if I wanted to, let me open my finished project here. Give me 1 second. Open my TIFF file. So you can always change things after. So let's say, this is our light beam and it's too yellow. I want it to be a lighter color. So we're going to go to the layer that is our light beam, choose a different color. So that was what we used. We could go to something over here. So like when we fill a layer with color, it's the Alt backspace or Option delete. We only want to put color on the pixels that hold color, in this case, the light beam, right? Because if I just did Alt backspace, it's going to fill my whole layer with color, which isn't what I want. When you do that, you're going to hold the Shift key when you do Alt backspace or Option delete, and now we have a lighter color beam than we did. So that's how you can change the color afterwards. Let's see. On a Mac, what do you click on after you apply a black and white adjustment for texture without color? That was, hang on 1 second. You actually don't need to click anything different with that. Let me open that one. All you're going to do, let me undo it, is you want to clip that to that. So you're going to hold the Alt on a Mac, it would be an Option key, and put your cursor in between the two layers and click once. And that clips it to that layer. So it's Alt on a PC, Option on a Mac. When you worked on the tractor, would removing distractions in camera raw work? Not sure what you mean by the distractions. Yeah, you could, these have already been edited. So this image, I just added the texture here, but I've already done my edit, most likely in Camera Raw, because that's what I usually do, and changed my sky and all that. So this was a complete, before I ever do any kind of texture work, I always get my image where I want it to be first. So that was, yeah, so with this one, that's what I did, is all that was done beforehand. You wouldn't do that here. This was just to, yeah, this one was just a color change of the texture. Let's see, I think I got them all. Glad you guys liked them. We're a little bit long today, but that's okay. We covered a lot of ground. So hopefully it gave you all some of, the things you may have forgotten about, like a couple of people have mentioned. It's a refresher. It's things you may not think to do or know to do, like changing the color of the texture. Thank you, Susan. She said one of my best webinars. I appreciate that. Thank you, Cindy, Linda, Janelle, Vicki, and everybody. I appreciate, as always, you guys being here. Don't forget to get your notes if you haven't already. I know a bunch of you have already. And the notes give you all these images and things that I've used, so that way you can play around with it if you watch the replay and kind of do it along with me. Sometimes I know that's how I learn better, is by actually doing it. So thank you, Phil. I appreciate that. And that's it. So again, the link will be out tomorrow. I'll have it posted when I get up in the morning. It takes time for it to all kind of do its thing tonight, and I'll be tired later. So, alrighty, guys. Thanks as always. I hope to see y'all soon. Sign up for the conference and grab your notes. Thanks.